All right, let's talk about something that I think bothers a lot of us. It's this really uncomfortable question. Why does it so often feel like the liars, the narcissists, and the bullies actually end up winning? We're going to get into the brutal logic of why that happens and, maybe more importantly, what you can actually do about it. Okay, let's get into it. When we're kids, we're told that the world is fair, that it rewards people who are kind, who play by the rules. But then you grow up, you look around, and that whole idea starts to fall apart. You see it in big corporations, in politics, all over the internet, and you just can't shake this feeling that the entire game is stacked in favor of a very different kind of player. And if you want a perfect, almost textbook example of this, look no further than the story of Uber's founder, Travis Kalanick. His story, his rise, and his supposed fall is a masterclass in how the rules of the game seem to have been completely rewritten. What's so wild about this timeline is just how fast everything unraveled. For years, Uber had this reputation for breaking every rule imaginable: illegal surveillance, ignoring local laws, stealing intellectual property. But in 2017, the wheels just completely came off. First, a massive lawsuit from Google, then the horrific sexual harassment allegations, and then the final nail in the coffin. A video gets leaked of Kalanick himself yelling at one of his own drivers. He was forced out. Game over, right? Not even close. After getting pushed out for creating this incredibly toxic culture, Travis Kalanick didn't lose everything. No, he walked away with a $3 billion compensation package. Today, he's funding new companies from his $43 million mansion. And that's the real kicker. He lost the job, sure, but he didn't really lose the game. And that just forces you to ask, how on earth is that possible? So, to understand how people like Kalanick seem to win, we have to get our heads around the psychological playbook they're using. And we have to understand the kind of environment that lets that playbook work so well. Because honestly, it's a strategy that's been around for centuries. See, the thing is, our moral instincts, our sense of fairness, it was all hardwired for life in the village. Think small, tight-knit groups where your reputation was everything. If you were a jerk, everyone knew about it instantly, and you'd face the consequences. But we don't live in the village anymore. We live in the jungle, these huge, impersonal systems like global corporations or governments or the internet. And in the jungle, those moral feedback loops just break down. The only currency that really matters is attention. And this is not a new idea. Way back in the 1500s, Niccolo Machiavelli saw this crystal clear. This was a guy deep in the political trenches of Renaissance Italy, a world of poisonings, public executions, and literal backstabbing. And his conclusion was pretty simple. In the brutal game of power, being a good person isn't what gets you ahead. Cunning and a willingness to be ruthless often are. Fast forward to today, and modern psychology has a name for this ruthless playbook. It's called the Dark Triad. Now, this isn't a medical diagnosis or anything. It's a set of 3 specific personality strategies that are just perfectly adapted to exploit the rules of the jungle. So let's break that down. First, you've got Machiavellianism. That's the strategic willingness to manipulate, to lie, and to pit people against each other to get what you want. Then there's narcissism. This is that obsessive self-importance, that relentless hunger for attention and validation. And finally, psychopathy. This one's a chilling lack of empathy, fear, and guilt, which, in a cutthroat business environment, can easily be mistaken for strength and clear-headedness. Okay, so it's really easy to look at all this and think, well, I guess I have to become a monster to succeed. But that is a really dangerous illusion, because what we don't see is the hidden and almost guaranteed price of playing this game. And here's the crazy paradox. Yes, it's true, people with high levels of these traits are way overrepresented in positions of power. CEOs, politicians, you name it. But they are also massively overrepresented in prisons. These are high-risk, high-reward strategies. They might help you climb the ladder in the impersonal jungle, but they will absolutely get you exiled from the cooperative village of everyday life. And here's the problem. Our brains are just terrible at seeing the whole picture. We see the one successful narcissist on the cover of a magazine, but we don't see the thousands of others with the exact same traits who got fired, whose partners left them, whose lives completely fell apart. It's a classic cognitive trap called survivorship bias. We think these toxic traits are a recipe for success because the failures are invisible, and only the rare, spectacular wins make the news. I mean, just look at Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos. She was the perfect Silicon Valley story, right? The brilliant young visionary changing the world. But the whole thing, her entire product, was built on a lie. She faked test results, she bullied employees, and she forced a narrative that was scientifically impossible. And for a while, it worked. Investors, former presidents, the media, everybody bought in. But here's the thing. A success built on these dark triad traits is never, ever stable. After 12 years, the lie just inevitably collapsed. And this really gets to the heart of it. The thing that's sacrificed on that win-at-all-costs path is guilt. And you might think, wow, a life without guilt? That sounds like a superpower. But it's not. It's a fatal flaw. Guilt is our internal alarm system. It's the crucial feedback loop that tells us we've made a mistake so we can learn from it. Without it, you can't correct your course. You just keep driving straight, right off a cliff. So, does all this mean you're just doomed to fail if you're a decent human being? Absolutely not. The challenge isn't to become more like them. The real challenge is to learn what they get right about navigating power and being visible, but doing it without sacrificing your integrity. So let's look at 3 practical ways you can adapt to the rules of the jungle without losing your soul in the process. Okay, first, empathize less and be more compassionate. Now, I know that sounds cold, but stay with me for a second. Empathy is about feeling someone else's pain. It's like jumping into the quicksand with them. It's emotionally draining, and honestly, it's often not that helpful. Compassion, on the other hand, is about understanding their pain and then strategically finding a rope to pull them out. It's rational, it allows you to actually help, and it keeps you from burning out. Second, and this is a big one, stop trying to get everyone to like you. That need for constant approval, it often hides itself as being nice, but if you look underneath, it's actually a subtle form of narcissism. It makes everything about how you are perceived. The real paradox is that you can only truly do the right thing when you are willing to be disliked for it. And finally, learn to speak up, even when you're not 100% sure. In these large, complex systems, the world doesn't reward the person who is right. It rewards the person who is visible. There are studies on this. In group settings, our brains subconsciously assume the person who talks the most is the most competent, regardless of what they're actually saying. Staying silent because you're afraid of being wrong is a guaranteed way to get overlooked. And if you're terrified of saying something stupid, just remember this. Isaac Newton, arguably one of the smartest people who ever lived, spent 30 years and wrote over 1 million words on alchemy, a complete and utter pseudoscience. We don't remember any of that, though, do we? Because his few truly great ideas were so powerful, they completely overshadowed all the bad ones. One great idea can literally undo the damage of 1,000 bad ones. So the question I want to leave you with is this. What bad ideas are you willing to risk putting out there in order to find the one that truly matters?